I was told everybody in Germany understands English, but I don't think so. It's really an honor to be here. I don't know how much you know about me, but I'll give a brief introduction and show you some examples of my work and of my brand. And then hopefully we'll all have a chance to make some art together. So here goes. My name is Michael Albert, and I'm an artist and an author and a businessman. This is my book called An Artist's America, and I guess many of my themes are American or made out of American packaged foods, so my publisher thought this would be a good title for my book. And there are many examples of the work that I've been doing in my book, many of which I have posters displayed here. But my story begins in business school. I never studied art formally. I went to NYU and studied business. I was actually an international business and management major. And by the time I found out what that was, it was too late. So I became interested in art after visiting many museums, mostly in New York City, but I did a little bit of traveling when I was younger. I'm 44 years old. I'm married. I have 4 children. We live in White Plains, New York, which is just north of Manhattan. And since I've been making this type of art, which is about 15 or 20 years now, more and more, especially since my book came out, I've been traveling around the United States, mostly visiting schools, libraries, and museums, and talking to groups about my work and running these types of workshops. Because I guess over the last 10 or 15 years, I've been very focused on collage and making art out of all these types of packaging. And the idea is very simple. It's a simple cut and paste project. Sometimes I do this with very young children, 5 years old. This is a more grown-up group than usual. Although I have spoken to groups of teachers and librarians who then take my project back to their students and share it with them. Professor Baumgart has, I wasn't sure why I was invited here, whether it was because I used brands in my artwork or because I have a brand of my own that I started. I don't know if any of you know about this, but I was a business student, and when it came time to graduate, I was only doing art for fun, for my own enjoyment. It had nothing to do with my schooling. The thing I always liked about it was that it had nothing to do with my schooling. Nobody could give me an assignment. Nobody could tell me if it was give me a grade on it. And it was one thing in my life that didn't adhere to all those types of rules. And over the last 15 years or so, it kind of took over and has really evolved. But when I was in business school, my plan was to get a job, entry-level job, and work very hard, and hopefully see where that led. My family had a family business, a lumber business, and so the reason I went to business school was growing up, there was much discussion about business in my family. And I never really thought of studying anything else. I thought I would learn what I could, and then hopefully if they needed me, be able to help out. Fortunately, they didn't need me. And I ended up starting my own business right out of college. I was really looking to work hard and make something of myself. I was willing to work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day to be successful. But most of the opportunities seemed to be very unattractive, I guess. You know, selling retirement plans to people, total strangers, working at a bank, doing I'm not sure what. And so I had an opportunity to get into business right out of school. While I was looking for a job, I saw a flyer for a juice from Scandinavia, a lingonberry juice. And I don't know if they have that in Germany. But lingonberries are like wild cranberries, and cranberry juice is very popular in America. And when I was in college, I had traveled to Europe, and I became familiar with a product called Orangina soda. And about the time I was in college, when I was graduating, suddenly Orangina was all over New York. It was in all the stores. And I thought to myself, whoever it is that is bringing Orangina to the United States is probably doing very well. When I saw this lingonberry juice product, the creator of the brand, you probably haven't heard of it, but it was called Nordia. I don't know. He told us, I told two of my friends about this opportunity. We thought this would be an amazing opportunity to have our own business right away. And all we had to do was be successful, and we'd be in charge. But it was a little bit more complicated than that, as things turned out. But he told us it was the most popular thing in Scandinavia. So I told my friends, this can be just like Orangina. All we have to do is get it into all the stores, and hopefully it will sell. And then we are the exclusive distributors of the lingonberry juice. And they liked that idea much better than the alternatives. And thus began my career in the food business. It's a pretty long story, but this is a 20-year story. But really what happened is that our plan was to take a fledgling brand and introduce it to the United States. And we figured that if we would be able to do that, we would have to be financially successful. We started with the lingonberry juice, but then a lot of small brands became very interested to know about these three recent college graduates who were running around the New York market selling to all the special stores. And we started getting phone calls from many different brands. And we were able to get our business off the ground. We were able to open many accounts with the lingonberry juice and with other products that we started distributing. But product after product that we were involved with, if it did well, if it was successful, the company would then call a much larger distributor and tell us, thank you very much, goodbye. So that was very disheartening for us. And that's when I had the idea to come up with my own brand, and I'm still involved with this today. It began as a private brand for my distribution business. Many stores and distributors create their own brands so they don't have to worry about that issue. You know, building up a brand so that they can be left in the dust, basically. And I felt very proud to go around to all these great stores, show them new products that they had never seen, and work to help introduce and launch these brands. But finding out that, that they don't need me anymore, they now have a large distributor, thanks in part to my hard work of getting the brand into all the stores that new brands should be introduced. I decided that what I needed was my own brand, and so that I could take all of my connections, all of my accounts, introduce my brand, and build that up for myself. And hopefully partner with other companies and people, but not...
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Okay. So in any case, this character is what I came up with for my brand, and it's called Surreal. He's a gentleman, and he's based on surrealism. I think Europeans know more about surrealism than Americans. Many Americans see him and don't make the connection, although it sells in the higher end markets, so I think people in the higher end do make the connection. In any case, well, I've noticed just looking at some of the packages that you have here, is that you don't seem to have as many characters, cartoon type characters. You have a bunch, but I think in America there's many more. Here is a collage I made where I collected every character I could find. I spent over a year. This is a poster. The original is much larger than this. 32 inches by 40 inches. It took me about a year, and my plan was to collect every character I could find, put them together. I think it makes a striking statement to see how many cartoon characters we have selling us things in America. But my plan was to create a character that was a little bit more intellectual, a little bit more developed, let's say, than some of these characters. And over the years, it's become almost an alter ego for me. He's everything that I wish that I could be. And it's been a great opportunity. And today I still run the company. I tried not to let my associates know that I was coming to Germany to talk about my collages because they wouldn't understand. They'd rather me come to their stores and help them stock their shelves and stand there pouring samples, which I like to do. But this is an amazing opportunity. And, I think in sales, you have to take a very low, humble position, even if you have a great product, because the buyers have the power. So basically, if they think that I'm all over the world as a traveling as an artist, then they think I don't need them, although I do. So that's really my position on that. But so if you'd like to know more about my brand, I'm happy to discuss it, maybe during the workshop. But I make juices, and I also started a licensing arrangement with a fresh fruit and vegetable company where I created characters and packaging for items such as potatoes, salad greens, herbs, and the surreal characters have almost become like a family of characters, all representing the same thing. I drew on, while I was here earlier, I drew some of them over there, you can see. I have the orange man, the lemon man, I have some of my leaves, my basil, my marjoram. I created a cow and a chicken, which I haven't used yet, but I think they might be good for dairy products or non-dairy products. And it's fun. I do collage mostly now for my serious fine art, but I do draw on occasion, and I always seem to draw those characters. Sometimes I run workshops, actually, where all the students will talk about surreal, and everybody draws their own characters, and it's a whole different type of project. But now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the other art that I do. Like I said, when I was in college studying business, it wasn't that exciting, interesting, I guess, creative. I didn't see a real connection between my classes and the working world. And I think that was maybe my problem. But once I got out of school and I got into the business world, I love doing business. I love all the different aspects of business. I guess sales, for me, is one of my favorite parts of business because it's an opportunity to meet so many different people and to try to figure out how to work together. You know, that's I think the goal of the salesperson, to figure out that relationship, figure out what they need, be able to give it to them in the way that they want it. And so that's been great. But when I started going around to museums, when I was in business school, I started thinking that art seems to me to be a little bit beyond the everyday world. You know, we all have to do things in our everyday lives, you know, to pay the bills, to keep our environments in order, and stuff like that. But something about art really appealed to me. Vincent van Gogh is one of my favorite artists, and his story is very inspiring to me because it's just the fact that he barely sold a painting in his lifetime. I'm sure his parents didn't think he was doing so great. You know, they thought, you know, he needs to get along with people better. He needs to do something where he's going to make some money. What's he doing? I think these are very typical parental thoughts. And but meanwhile, in 1988, when I was graduating from school, one of his paintings sold to a Japanese businessman for $90 million. I don't know how many euros it is, but it's a lot. And I just thought, this is interesting. This was somebody who barely could sell one painting in his whole life. You know, at the time, some people might have said that he wasn't so successful. But by the time this had happened, I thought, obviously he's one of the most successful people in history. And people are studying his every word, his every creation. They're traveling all over the world to view his works. And to me, I just thought that he seemed to be operating on a much higher level than the everyday person. And I guess my plan was to secretly operate on that level, where nobody could give me a grade or tell me it wasn't any good or that they didn't want to buy it, while at the same time doing the things I had to do to get my career started. And my first art was drawing. I don't have a large picture of it, but I do have a postcard of it in the other room I can show you. I'll hold this up. Maybe you can walk around with this book and show people. This is one of my earliest works, which is a drawing. I don't know if any of you can see it from where you are, but it was a drawing of all the different products and items that were in my college dorm room. And it's about the size of one of these posters, so it's a pretty sizable drawing. Up until this point, I was experimenting a little bit with drawing, but I never put the kind of effort and energy into into one artwork as I did this. It took me over a month to do, and I worked on it almost every day. And when I was done with it, I had a real sense of pride that I had spent so much time creating something and not wasting my time. You know, there's so many ways we can waste our time. And for me, art was a way to really enjoy myself. I can really relax while I'm creating my work. But I also feel like, you know, they call it artwork because it's work, it's serious. You know, nobody calls their golf game work unless you're somebody really famous and, you know, you're a professional golfer. But otherwise, it's a game. For me, art's not a game. And I think life is too short to, you know, spend too much time playing games. I know there's definitely a place for it, but for me, I'm able to kind of play my game while at the same time doing something which I feel is very serious and important. So that was really my main motivation to try to create art. Eventually, as I got busier in my business and in my working life, I had to really make an effort to carve out time to make art and to keep up the energy it takes to make art. And my first collages were made out of miscellaneous materials that I had either at home or at my office that I thought were nice, but I didn't really have any good practical use for them. I started making collages out of stickers and junk mail. You know, the waste created, I don't know if they have as much waste here as they do in the United States, but these packages are a perfect example of waste. You have a few granola bars, and the next thing you know, you have a beautiful printed box that's going to end up in a landfill, probably. Or it's going to take a tremendous amount of energy to recycle it. And, you know, not like there's not costs to recycle it. You know, it's better to recycle than not, but it takes energy to recycle. Yes? 3 more? Okay. So I'm going to tell you about the project, and then we can kind of have an open discussion while it's going on. But so I began making collages sort of as a way to make myself feel better. I didn't want to just be an automatic participant in this creating garbage process. Junk mail was a perfect example. I would get junk mail, and rather than just look at it for 2 seconds and throw it straight into the garbage, I started saving different elements of it that I thought were interesting. I thought it was a complete waste for somebody to have printed this and mailed it to me so that I could just throw it straight into the garbage. And so I started using these materials to do something, to be part of a solution rather than be just another part of the problem. And that led me into using these types of packaging. You know, again, at some point, I just felt bad to just crush these things and throw them out. And I felt that I started making some pretty interesting looking work, but at the same time, I'm making this statement, and that made me feel like it was even more worthwhile to do this. You're all going to work on a project together here. The black board that you see in the center of your table is what you're going to be creating your work on. You need to all discuss what you want to do and come up with your own idea. Let me just give you a few quick ideas and of some of the things I've done. This idea was where I just simply took one box, cut it up into pieces, mixed those pieces around, and created an abstraction of this Frosted Flakes box. Frosties, I think they call it over But I thought it was pretty interesting that even though it was all deconstructed, that you could instantly tell what it is. You know, it just shows the power of a brand. If you take a brand and do this to it, and then you can't recognize what it is, then it doesn't have strong brand power. But certain brands, like a Coca-Cola carton, if you even took one little piece of it, you immediately know what it is, because it's such a powerful brand. And so, with these, I was really exploring that idea. Plus, I really thought they looked cool, you know, after deconstructing them and putting them back together again. So this is one idea for you. Later, I really started dissecting all the boxes and creating other types of works. You know, I guess there's a number of different themes that I've been developing over the years. Like I was showing you here, this is just a collection of characters. I call this one Judgment Day, because no one escapes judgment. And so that's why I didn't want to miss any of these characters. And of course I made my surreal characters along the bottom as the ultimate judges of them. But they couldn't, you know, they know they shouldn't judge others, but they can't help themselves. Another idea which is very important to me was this one, which was, I had started calling my cereal box collages serialism. And these are really the first works that have become popular. And a lot of people call me the cereal box pop artist, just because even though I don't only use cereal, that's just, I guess, what's stuck in some of their minds. But I thought to myself that if I'm the serialism artist, that I should do my version of The Last Supper and call it The Last Breakfast. And so I made Surreal, my own character, the central figure, surrounded by the 12 characters, the apostles, my favorite 12 serial characters. And then I cut out letters from all different packages and spelled messages which I think, you know, are important. To me, this really took my art to another level where not only was it visually interesting, but sayings such as try your best, love thy neighbor, do the right thing, live each day as if it were your last. You know, really important messages like that. I thought it was interesting to combine all this pop imagery with ideas like this. I really liked the messages in that, and then I started doing some works that were all letters. So you might want to come up with a phrase or a message and maybe work on that. This one is a map of the United States. I had always wanted to create a map. There's a very famous map by the American artist Jasper Johns. I don't know if you've ever seen that work. But I wanted to do my version of a map. And I thought, since I use these letters and all these packaging, I would spell out all the states and capitals and any other place I could think of and put them in geographical order. So I don't think you're going to have time for one of these. This took me over 100 hours to do. But just as a general idea. Here's another idea.